eftach v'lo yevchor oy ki yozev v'zimros ko Hashem oy va yehi li Yeshua ushavtem mayim besosoy mimayinei ha-Yeshua la-Hashem ha-Yeshua v'alamecha oy be'yer chasech-chaselo Hashem tzvakoi sihimonu Niskav lanu Elokei Yaakov Selo Hashem tzvakoi zashrei yodam bo'voite yachvach Hashem hoshio hamelech ya'anenu v'yom koreinu LaYehudim hoysoiro v'simcha v'sobasoin v'yikon ken ti'elonu k'os Yeshua yiseso v'yovu b'shem Hashem ben ekro Sahabrim Aranon, Vrabonon, Vraboisai. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Choylo Oirei Peri Hagofer Amen. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam oirei minei besamim Amen. Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam oirei mei oirei haolam Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Ha'mavdil ben kodesh lechol Einar lechashech Ben Yisroel v'lo ahamim Ein yoim hashevei L'shesh yimei hama'aseh Baruch atah Hashem Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Shavua Tov. Welcome. It's wonderful to get together and to share a Motzei Shabbos. I hope that you had a meaningful Shabbos and a restful Shabbos, an uplifting Shabbos. Here's two songs that I've just come across, which are a little different, but I think they're quite nice.
Eliyahu Hanavi zachur latov, 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 Eliyahu Hanavi zachur latov. Zachur latov, Hanavi, Eliyahu. Zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi zach, Eliyahu Hanavi zach, Eliyahu Hanavi zach, Eliyahu Hanavi zach, Eliyahu Hanavi zachur latov, 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 Eliyahu Hanavi zachur latov. Zachur latov, Hanavi, Eliyahu. Zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi. Zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi. Zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi. Zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov. Zachur latov, Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu Hanavi, zachur latov, Eliyahu.
Okay, you know, you've got to always love a little bit of technical glitch that happens along the way. So the next song I was about to play just bumped off the Spotify list. So just give me half a second to retrieve it. It is an interesting one. It's an interesting song. It's quite appropriate for the month of Elul. Just before we play that, I'd like to extend a special welcome to our guest for this evening, Wayne Kopping, and the Mishpocha. I see that the Mishpocha has come for moral support, which is really nice. And
thank you, Rabbi. Or is it Rabbi DJ Shishler tonight?
If anybody's brave enough to put on your camera, we like to see faces. We like to see faces. We like to see real people. Give me half a second. I want to bring up that song because it's a nice one. And then from that, we'll go to a quick video. And then we'll hear from Wayne. And then we've got some beautiful music. It's a nice evening. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And as I say, if you can put on a camera, it just adds a lot of value.
First level love is spotted us. Say hello to your Gashmius. Let it know you're gonna bring Achdus and introduce it to your Ruchnius. The first level love is spotted us. Say hello to your Gashmius. Let it know you're gonna bring Achdus and introduce it to your Ruchnius. Oh Hashem, I wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you. Oh Hashem, I wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you. Even if you think that you're really far, just remember who you really are. You are a piece of Hashem, and He wants you to talk to Him. If you think that you're really far, just remember who you really are. You are a piece of Hashem, and He wants you to talk to Him. Oh Hashem, I just wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you. Oh Hashem, I wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you. Every now and then speak to Him in your own words. Learn this from the beautiful birds. Watch them tweet, get out of your seat and go to the woods and talk to the Lord. Every now and then speak to Him in your own words. Learn this from the beautiful birds. Watch them tweet, get out of your seat and go to the woods and talk to the Lord. Oh Hashem, I wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you. Oh Hashem, I wanna talk to you. I wanna get close to you.
You know, all Hashem really wants is a relationship with you. So let Him know that you really want a relationship with Him too. Just say hi. Talk to Him.
Yeah, there you go. That's definitely something that's a little bit different, but I thought it was nice. Different speed, different pace. Get us into the month of Elul. Hashem just wants us to speak to Him. As we do every Motzei Shabbos, we play a little bit of music. We have a short inspirational video, this time a video about the significance of the month of Elul, followed by our guest speaker for this evening, Wayne Kopping, who will come to straight after this video.
The month of Elul is a time of introspection and preparation for the days of awe. In an address to children, the Rebbe teaches how we can all infuse these days with greater meaning.
Dort hebt sich schon noch Chedisch Elul, darf man der Monnen sich und andere und zugeräten sich und andere in dem Ruach, in dem Limud und in der Wendung, mit welcher sie verbunden Chedisch Elul. Mit was teilt sich Chedisch Elul von allen Chadoshim von ganz Jahr, sagt der alte Rebbe. Als in Chedisch Elul, das Bedugmi, das gleich, wie ein Ameller Bosser Vadam, Ameller gefindt sich Basode in Feld und trefft sich dort mit den Menschen, was gehören zu ihm, mit den Menschen von seiner Medine, wie die Menschen gefinden sich Basode. Was ist der Chiluk, wie ein Mensch gefindt sich in dem Hechel, in dem Armee von dem Palas von dem Meller, oder wie gefindt sich Basode, bis gefindt sich im Feld, ist vernommen mit Ackern und Seen. Nicht guckendig auf drauf, geht der Reis der Meller von seinem Palas und von seiner Stadt, von seiner Hauptstadt, und geht weg im Feld, zu den Menschen, wie seine Vernommen mit der Feldarbeit, und dort, wie sie sagt der alte Rebbe, beweist See a schmeicheldicken Ponnen und nimmt jeder nur von See mit der Sever Ponnen Joffis und hört sich zu der Ruf, was der Mensch, was gefindt sich im Feld, inmitten seiner Feldarbeit, redt mit dem Kaiser und bett bei ihm, und erst danach wirkt das, die alle Feldmenschen gehen danach mit dem Kaiser in seine Hauptstadt und danach echt in sein Palast. Was ist das der Nimschal, was ist das der Vergleich zu Zivis Hashem, bis ein Mensch, ein Engel oder ein Mädel, gefindt sich in dem ewigsten Armee, ist zum allen Menschen und sein Hebschliches ist. A führende Milchome mit dem Jeser, durch den Ruf, was lernt Teire und ist Mekaye Mitzvahs, und Echet Wahavtolere Yacho Komecho, wirkt Echet, der Engel auf der zweiten Engel und der Mädel, auf der zweiten Mädel, sie sollen sich Echet, sie aufführen. Der Eibischter hat sich aber beschaffen Menschen, Echet, die was gehören zu Zivis Hashem, als sie dürfen sich von Zeit zu Zeit abruhen, wo das wie in der Moschel am Gefühl sich im Feld, nicht wie mir steht auf Apparat vor den Meller, wo damals dürfen sich stehen streng und ungestrengt und mit Kabbalas Eil, oder wenn mir viel die Milchome mit dem Jezer, nur gefindt sich dämmelt, im Feld und tut Feldarbeit, ackert und seht sein Guf von sich allein, gedei noch soll von ihm auswachsen, Peres Mitzvahs, auf Mekaim sein die Mitzvah mit Yochoda, die spezielle Mitzvah, was hat jeder, was gehört zu Zivis Hashem, auf Menasseer sein dem Jeser und machen, da in der Welt, in Shomayim, wo Ores, Adira Leis Borech. Wo das ist die spezielle Sache, was sie verbunden mit dem Zusammenkleiden von Zivis Hashem, was sich schön durchgenommen mit der Ruach und mit der Anweisung von Elul, aber man darf gedenken, Aber Schaß esst und trinkt und ruht sich auf, nicht esst und trinkt und schläft zu lieb die Sache allein. Nur gedenkendig, als gehört zu Zivis Hashem, hat einen Ansag von dem Kommandier in Chief, als darf sein gesund, durch Essen und Trinken und Äußerung sich. Gedeider noch soll sein noch gesinnter, wie Besitzter, in Menasseer sein dem Jeser, und machen dem ewigsten Adiro, Leis Borech, und unter Dämmelt, ist wie gesagt früher, als sein dick im Feld, beweist dem der Kommandier in Chief, als schmeicheldicken Ponnen, und hört sich zu seinen Reden und zu seinen Aufführen sich, hat ja viele, dass sie reden und aufführen sich, wie sie darf sein in der Feld, wie gerät früher, in wochendicke Sachen, worin das sich dazu gerät, zu da noch geht man zusammen mit dem Melech, in ihr Malchus in sein Hauptstadt in der Capital, und danach geht man mit ihm in dem Armena Melech in sein Palast, und mir gräßt sich, wie der Sach von Chedisch Erlerlis. Aber danach kommt Reish Hashono, und mit dem macht man den Ebersten, für ein Kaiser auf sich allein und auf der ganzen Welt, mit der beneideten Starkheit, mit der beneideten Lichtigkeit und mit der beneideten Fröhlichkeit.
So here we are, we're in the month of Elul. That's the time that we're in. It's the time of the king in the field. It's a time of special closeness to Hashem, as you saw in that video. So even if we're resting, even if we're involved in our so-called ordinary activities, so here is the opportunity for us to connect to Hashem even in ordinary day-to-day stuff. So it's a really special opportunity for me. You'll excuse me if I'm slightly distracted with one little technical glitch happening over here in the background. So it's a real pleasure to have this evening with us a good friend, once upon a time member of our community in the good days, and somebody who's had a very interesting experience traveling through all different, shall we say, rest points, stops, experiences in life. So when I spoke to Wayne originally about, I knew straight away that when I would ask him to speak this evening, he would be happy and enthusiastic, because that's the kind of person that he is. Always willing to participate, always willing to do, always willing to assist. And so I thought it would be really interesting just to hear some of what Wayne has to tell us about his experiences in life. So some of us, and Wayne reminded me of this, some of us may remember Wayne. I personally was I never watched KTV as a kid. I'm sorry, Wayne, I do apologize in advance.
Okay, we'll take your word for it.
And I never got to watch KTV, but there you were, and you had your opportunities there, getting into the world of show business, and I guess maybe you could tell us a little bit about what happened there, and then your travels through both the world of film and production and LA, and meeting all kinds of interesting people, as well as a journey of personal discovery. I know that Erev Shabbos, when we spoke, you told me a beautiful story, which I hope you will share during the course of this evening. So I'm just going to let you start and tell your story. I'm sure people will have questions to ask you along the way. But you're a great storyteller. So Wayne, over to you.
Listen, first of all, Rav, when you called me yesterday, there wasn't a question. I'd do anything for you. I'd walk across hot coals for you. And it's just like such a pleasure and a privilege. And thank you so much. And, I was just thinking, it's the month of Elul. And I was just thinking, I'm going to have to give a din v'cheshbon. They're going to ask me one day, after 120, why didn't you spend more time with Rabbi Shishler? And I know I'm going to have to answer for that. I'm not going to have a very good answer. So, but the time that I have spent with you so far has been literally life-changing. And so thank you so much for that.
We'll count this one in. When they come to the Din V'Cheshbon, we have this one on record. It's being recorded. So this one.
That's part of what I'm hoping. And I remember we used to have our I'll tell the audience, you know, I asked the rabbi, I said, Rabbi, I want to learn Gemara. I want to learn Gemara Sota. So the rabbi's very clever. He said, okay, I'll learn Gemara Sota with you, but you have to learn some Chassidus with me. So we had an amazing time. We would learn Sota on a Sunday and Chassidus on a Tuesday. Am I right, Rabbi?
Yes, exactly. Very much so. I definitely remember the Sota. Do you remember the Chassidus?
I do. I remember all about Makif, and I remember all about, we were learning about Esav and Yaakov, and we were learning about very, very deep things that escape me right now, but I remember Makif in particular as related to Esav, if my memory serves. And yeah, very, very precious. So, Rabbi, where to start? I don't even know where to start. What's so great is I know so many people at the shul, and it's so great to see all the faces and all the names. And I just want to say I miss everybody so much.
I think start at the beginning. Start right at the
Okay.
beginning. People don't necessarily know your career background. Start with that, and then you could talk a little bit about how the journey became entwined with Yiddishkeit.
All right. So it's like Rabbi Tatz once said. He said, I grew up normal. Meaning we weren't Shomer Shabbos when we grew up. In fact, I was like very, very, I was a proud Jew, but I wasn't really connected to anything so much. When I was 8 years old, I ended up on some television commercial sets. And I remember even from that age, that always the food was an amazing thing on these television commercials. And they'd have these massive spreads, and they would offer, especially in the morning, they'd say, you know, would you like some bacon? I was like, no, I'm not going to have bacon. You know, I'm Jewish, but can I have a cheeseburger? That'd be great. You know, so, we were very, very traditional, very, very proud Jews, but didn't really have a real connection to Yiddishkeit. And in fact, Yiddishkeit wasn't on my agenda in any way, shape, or form. What actually was on my agenda was working in film, working in television, being an actor, being, you know, something involved in the entertainment industry, and that was my big thing. I started out, as I mentioned, as a child actor. I was 8 years old when I got my big break, and my big break was for the Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial. It was an amazing break. What actually happened was, if you remember video machines, VCRs, if you would press pause on the VCR at exactly the right moment, you'd see like a little strawberry blonde pixel. You know, that was me. That was my big break. And it was a very, very exciting time. And on that commercial, where I was just an extra, one of hundreds of people on that particular show, I met the director. When I say I met when I say I met the director, I think I was a bit of a precocious kid, or so they tell me. And the director, obviously, I think I might have made myself known to him at the time, and he was casting another commercial that came up a few months later. That was for the Big Pen commercial. Those of you who are more or less my age or older will remember the commercial where the clown stands on the pens. So I was in that commercial, and that commercial ran for many, many years. And throughout my career and throughout my schooling, I always had this vision of moving to LA, working in Hollywood, making movies, that kind of thing. And what ended up happening was, shortly after high school, I started working at a production company that made KTV and other programs. But after a year or two of directing on KTV, I felt like now was the time to branch out. So I went to the States, and I went to a film school in the States. And what was very, very interesting was it was coming up to Rosh Hashanah. And so my late mom, so she sent me a fax, for those of you that can remember faxes. My mom sent me a fax, and she said, you know, Rosh Hashanah is coming up in a few weeks, in like a week or two. What are you doing for Rosh Hashanah? And I'm like, you know, I was in the middle of a place called Rockport, Maine on the East Coast of the United States. And the thing that Maine was famous for was lobster, you know, and I didn't eat lobster at that time, but because I was very, very frum, but, well, not frum, but I didn't eat the lobster. But so my mom said, what are you doing for Rosh Hashanah? And so I said, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't think there are any Jews around here in any way, shape, or form. She said, listen, look in the phone book and look for synagogues and see if you can get yourself in a shul somewhere or other. So I being the good son that I try to be, I looked in the phone book, and there was a synagogue in Rockland, which is just outside of Rockport, Maine. And I called them up. Hi, I'm this kid. I'm from South Africa. I'm at film school, blah, 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 blah. And they invited me to the temple. And I went to the temple for Rosh Hashanah. And when I was there, it was actually fascinating. I met a woman who invited me for Rosh Hashanah dinner. And while we were talking, she told me that her daughter was, she told me her daughter's name. I'm not going to mention the name for reasons that will become clear shortly, but she told me who her daughter was. And I instantly recognized her daughter's name. And her daughter was an actress on a TV show that I used to love and watch all the time. And she said, you know, my daughter lives in LA. If you ever want to meet my daughter, if you're ever going to go to LA, you know, look her up. So this was an amazing thing, because I wanted to go to LA, but I didn't really have any contacts there in any way, shape, or form. So I called up this woman, and I introduced myself to her, and I said, I used to watch you on this TV show, and she was really amazing. And she said, when you come to LA, you know, look me up. And so after my film school, I went to LA and I looked up this particular woman, and she's a producer, and she was working on a number of different films. And I actually got to work on one of the films, just in the grip and electric department, for a week or two when I was there. And this woman said, you know, she could see, you know, South Africans have a very good work ethic. And she invited me back. She said, you know, if you want to come back to LA, you know, what'll it take? I said, I need a sponsor. She said, I'll sponsor you in at the production company. And it was an amazing thing. And I thought, like, my hashkacha pratit was like unbelievable. And so I went back to South Africa and I sold everything up. And that's it. I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to work in the film industry. And shortly before I was about to leave South Africa, I got a note from this woman's assistant saying that she had checked herself back into rehab, and she wasn't able to sponsor me into the country anymore. And so I had a decision to make, because at the time I had a production company that was pretty successful in South Africa, and I'd now had my film school experience, and I was moving into other kinds of production, and I had a choice to make. Do I stay in South Africa and continue growing as a director in South Africa, or do I go to LA and, as they say in the book, seek my fortune? And so I went to LA. In the interim, I got married to my childhood sweetheart. We got married, and we decided we're going to go off to LA. And, you know, from a professional point of view, you know, thank God throughout my life, I'd had a lot of really amazing luck, where one thing had led to another, just like this thing that I'm telling you about. But when I got to LA, the muzzle was completely afuch, as they would say. It was completely upside down. I was, not only wasn't this woman able to sponsor me, but I couldn't find another sponsor. Not only that, but I would joke with my wife, and I would say, I think that there's a list in LA that said, you know, do not call Wayne Kopping back, no matter who it is. Just don't call Kopping back. I was convinced that there was this list. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I was writing whilst I had this time on my hands, but also my wife and I were interested in kind of, you know, before we left South Africa, we would go to shul on a Friday night, like most South Africans, before we went out or before we went to family dinner. But it was just like Friday night shul. So we thought, let's go to a shul and let's see if we can find a Friday night shul, and maybe you can make some contacts there. Maybe, you know, since Hollywood is run by the Jews, just like the banks, since Hollywood is run by the Jews, maybe we can make some contacts at shul, and maybe those people will call you back. So that's what we did. And we ended up at the Chabad of the Marina, as I was telling the Rav. And we had an amazing time with the Rabbi and the Rebbetzin there. And funnily enough, it was at the Chabad of the Marina, we were introduced to a bunch of South Africans that were setting up a shul in Santa Monica that were affiliated to Aisha Torah. And long story short, my wife and I started attending classes with Aisha Torah, and it was at that time where I was learning these ideas about Yiddishkeit that I'd never really learned before in my formative years in South Africa. And maybe I would even say that I was even open to hearing these ideas. But what was interesting was my wife worked for a producer at the time, and they were making all sorts of films with substantially famous people whose names I don't want to mention, but you would recognize these names. My wife was an assistant to this producer, and she'd come home every day from work and on these film sets and in these film meetings, and she was kind of like broken. You know, she saw the wheeling and the dealing and the lies and the cheating and the, all that kind of corrupt stuff. And I said to her, you have to just quit this job. And we were relying on my wife's salary because my work papers hadn't come through. I was on an O visa that hadn't come through yet, and because I didn't have a sponsor, and we were relying on my wife's income. But I said to her, you know what, you can't go back into work. This is killing you. It's destroying you. This environment is terrible. And, Hashem has a great sense of humor. So Hashem made it that they offered her a job at Aisha Torah. And so she started working for Aisha Torah in Los Angeles. Now, she was working in the office that invented speed dating. You've all heard of speed dating, and it's been in all the movies. It was invented in Aisha Torah, in HLA. My wife was working with Rabbi Deo, who was the rabbi in charge of a group of students that actually invented speed dating. So they were doing very innovative stuff. And one of the things that they asked my wife to do was to produce an audio cassette series on all the basic fundamentals of Judaism. And because I knew my wife had experience in the film and in television industry and in production. And so my wife, of course, asked me to run the production. So my wife did the marketing, and she did all the high level producing stuff. And she asked me to actually produce the series. And what that entailed was we had to we basically get recordings from all of the top rabbis in the United States and in Israel, and also some of the top rebbetzins, and they would do these 1-hour classes specifically for this tape series, and then they would send us the material, and then I'd have to edit it and have to cut it down and package it into the series. So I was basically, I think it was like a 15 or 20 part series. So I was basically having to edit basic Jewish hashkafa, and these ideas of this hashkafa was actually, it was speaking to me in a way, but I wouldn't admit it to anyone, of course. But these ideas ranging from, Shabbos to life after death, male-female relationships, all these kind of things were really, really very interesting to me. And it was around about that time that we started to learn more about our Yiddishkeit. We spent a bit more time at Aisha Torah, and that's where our interest in Yiddishkeit really started to grow. And it was a very interesting time because I was kind of like at a crossroads in my life where my life could have gone one of two ways. I could have, my work papers came through, and I started to work in the industry, and I started to see what the industry was like, and all the cliches that you hear about it, about the, it's not sneers and all sorts of illicit substances and all sorts of shenanigans that go on. All those cliches are very, very true. And so I was very much exposed to that, but also at the same time, I was being exposed to these Jewish ideas that I'd never been exposed to. And it was kind of like at a crossroads. And there was a gentleman in Los Angeles by the name of Mr. Richard Horowitz, and part of what he did was he would sponsor young adults trips to Israel. And so he sponsored a trip for my wife and I to go to Israel for 6 weeks. When he invited us to his office, he said, would you like to go to Israel? We said, we'd love to, but we can't afford it. He says, well, why not? He says, well, we got rent, and we got this, and we got that. So he says, okay, I'll pay your rent. And what else? Well, car and this. And he's like, okay, I'll pay all that stuff. And then will you go? So yeah, we'll go. So we went, and we had an amazing time. And what ended up happening was, I thought that I was going to Los Angeles to break into Hollywood. I thought I was going to Los Angeles to become a filmmaker. I thought I was going to Los Angeles to become, known in this industry. But what I didn't realize was that we were actually going to LA so that we could find ourselves, so that we could find our place in the world, so we could find a connection with who we are and who we are in the Jewish people and what it means, what the Torah means. And it was a very, very exciting time. It was a very, very humbling time. And it was at the point where I had my work papers and I was ready to go and I was doing stuff. And we had a choice whether to stay in LA or to go live in Israel and to learn in Israel. And it was a very, very difficult decision in one respect, but in another respect, it was a very easy decision because the stuff that we were learning was so fascinating, and it was a kind of a now or never type of situation. And we decided, let's pack it all up, and we actually made Aliyah. We made Aliyah, and we lived in Israel for 2.5 years. Now, what was interesting was, first of all, the story about Rabbi Akiva. I'm not comparing myself to Rabbi Akiva, but the part that I can compare myself to, the story of Rabbi Akiva, when he would sit in the kindergarten, with like 5-year-olds learning Aleph Beis. That's kind of like what my yeshiva experience was like, where I had to learn basically from, Aleph Beis and these ideas that were very, very challenging for me. And so the rabbi had the fortune or misfortune of learning Gemara with me. It was like, things were very, very challenging for me. And so I made things very, very difficult for my rabbis because I really couldn't understand these Gemara ideas. And it was very, very humbling. And I'll since it's Motzei Shabbos, it's a Jewish crowd, I'll tell one story that really nailed it and put it into perspective. So we were learning, the first Gemara we learned was Eila Metzias, right? In Bava Metzia. So now, try to picture this. When I got to yeshiva, I was like learning all these things about, life after death and Shabbos and all this beautiful hashkafa. And I'm learning Gemara now. And I thought Gemara was a midrash. So I thought the Gemara was like all the stories behind the Torah. That's what I thought Gemara was. And we're sitting down and now we're having to learn Eila Metzias. And what's Eila Metzias? Eila Metzias is basically the laws of lost objects. And I remember sitting there trying to learn this, and it was just this, you have like a bunch of fruits in a particular kav ba'arv amas, and if it's like this, then is it Yushal Amadas or Lo Yushal Amadas, and there's what about this and that, and the simon, and we're learning all these things, and I actually thought I'd made a very big mistake. If this is what Torah learning was going to be about, I was the wrong guy for this. I didn't relate to this stuff at all. I was coming here to learn about spirituality, and now we're learning about, what does it mean to own something? And what does it mean to make a kinyan on something? What is hefker? And all these like really technical and legal terms. And I was very close to throwing in the towel, or at least going to some other yeshiva that would teach us stuff that was more spiritual. And one of the things that we learned was, when it comes to the laws of lost objects, and it's relevant, of course, to today's parsha, is you especially have to return an item if it's got a thing called a simon, if it's got an identifying mark, like someone's name or phone number or something like that. So I was learning about that. So I thought, let me put into practice what I'm learning. I had my cell phone and I put my name on the back of my cell phone. And that afternoon, I was riding home on my bicycle from yeshiva, which is in the old city, to our apartment, which is in Ramat Eshkol. And to get home, we basically went through like next to Mea Sharem, you can call it. And I got home, and my phone wasn't in my pocket and my phone wasn't in my bag. And I realized that I must have dropped my cell phone somewhere along the way between the old city and home. And so at first I was worried about it. And my wife was worried about it. And I said, you know what? You don't have to worry. I'll tell you why. Because we're learning in this Gemara, Eila Metzias, that if something has a siman, you are obligated to return this lost object. And we went through all these neighborhoods, all these from neighborhoods, and these guys have all learned this Gemara. So all we have to do is just wait by the phone and someone will return it. And sure enough, you know, within the hour, we got a phone call, and like in their broken English and my broken Hebrew, we ascertained that it was my phone and where this individual was. And I remember riding my bicycle over to collect my phone, and like it started to click. Like the most spiritual thing is something like returning a lost object. And so that was a very interesting thing that happened to me. It didn't make learning Gemara any easier, but it started to make it, I started to understand how it's a lot more practical than I thought it actually was. Then we learned Sota with Rabbi Shishler. That's not going to be relevant, you know, to anyone. But Eila Metzias was incredibly relevant.
Wayne, can you tell us? That's an amazing story. I love that story. That's an amazing story. Can you tell us a little bit about the things that you've produced and the journeys that that's taken you on in recent times?
All right. So here I am. I'm in the old city, and what I didn't mention was we had gone to Israel right at the height of the Intifada. All right. There were bombs going off in Israel. It was a terrible time, and actually, my wife and my mother-in-law were actually right near the Sabaro restaurant about 20 minutes before that terrible attack happened. So that was the time when we were in Israel. And just like every other Jew, everyone was wondering, what can we do? Everybody felt so incredibly helpless. And a friend of mine from LA, he worked for Pixar at the time. Pixar is co-owned by Apple, and he said to me, I've got a tax refund, and I've got a bit of money, and I bought from Apple, an Apple Mac and a video camera, and I'm just sending it to you, and you just do whatever you like, just do something with it, you know, regarding the Intifada, and something about something, because you're there and I'm here. And so he sent this editing system over with a video camera, and it was an amazing thing. But what was incredible hashgacha, and this is to answer your question, Rabbi, is one of the rabbis at Eshet Torah named Rabbi Raphael Shore. He was developing a PowerPoint presentation that within an hour would explain what the Intifada was, what the Oslo Accords were, what Camp David was, basically explaining within an hour why Israel and the Palestinians were at a loggerheads and why we were in the situation that we were in today. And he developed this as a PowerPoint presentation, and someone said to me, you know, there's a South African guy, Wayne Kopping, and there's another South African guy, Brian Spector. They're both in the yeshiva. Maybe they can help you turn this into a documentary. And so, and we did. Brian Spector and myself, we worked with Rabbi Shaw, and we made a film that eventually became Relentless. I think we played Relentless, Rabbi. I think we played it in your shul. And
I think
and
we
that
credited
looked at,
it in our show.
That's right. That's right. I think we actually did. Yes, that's right. Thank you. That's right. And so that film was about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Now, if everyone remembers, around about that time, we're talking about like 2001, like around about the 9/11 period of time, we were also seeing terror attacks happening all over the world. And so we turned our attention then from the Palestinian-Israeli issue to the issue of global terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism around the world. And that was a film called Obsession. And that film ended up being seen by, tens of millions of people around the world. One of the things is because it was picked up by Fox News. Fox News wanted to do an entire special about the film, and so they flew me out to New York City and to speak about the film, and they played the film 10 times on their international network. And so there was that film, and then after that we made a film called The Third Jihad. I think you see the poster over there, which it got seen by a lot less people for many reasons. And I've made several other films, either relating to radical Islamic terrorism or Israel or Israeli soldiers. And so I think the point is, and I'll come back to the story you asked me about, Rabbi, in a second, but I think that, I wanted to be a filmmaker and I wanted to make all these movies but at the time when I was younger, I didn't really care about what movies I was going to make. I just wanted to make movies, but I feel like I'm incredibly privileged and incredibly, it's a real gift that I'm able to do the thing that I love, which is filmmaking, but I'm able to work on projects that actually have meaning, that actually are about something significant, and especially are able to be of service to Klal Yisrael. And when I was going through the process, learning about Yiddishkeit in the beginning, and when I was living in LA, I was always worried about, how would I be Shomer Shabbos and work in the film industry? Because Shomer Shabbos and film, those things do not work together. And also keeping kosher and in the film industry, those two things don't go together. So I always had a lot of anxiety. I always thinking maybe I won't become really Shomer Shabbos, because if I want to work in Hollywood, if I want to be a filmmaker, then I can't have both. And now we're in a situation where, thank God, I'm still working with Rafael Shaw. I'm working with people that are involved in Yiddishkeit, and Shabbos is not an issue, and Kashrus is not an issue, and it's an amazing thing. Okay, so I mentioned to the Rav, this particular story, and it's related to what I was just saying now a moment ago, and that is, would I have? I guess I was always concerned, would I have the guts or the intestinal fortitude to really stick by my principles when push came to shove? Like, for instance, I was always concerned about if my Yiddishkeit was ever really put to the test, would I ever be able to pass or fail? And I remember we'd been Shomer Shabbos for a while now, and there was this famous story, I'm sure you remember, where Matisyahu was on the Jimmy Kimmel show a number of years ago. And it was an amazing thing where Jimmy Kimmel asked Matisyahu, he said, so you're a religious Jew now, and what does that mean? He says, well, you can't really play music on the Sabbath. And so Jimmy Kimmel asked him, he said, well, what if I give you $5,000? Would you play, would you do a gig on a Friday night? Matisyahu was like, nope. He says, what if I give you 10,000? Nope. 100,000? Nope. 200,000? Nope. $1 million? Nope. Matisyahu, and Jimmy Kimmel, he was blown away, and I was also blown away, to be able to turn down $1 million for a Friday night, that's quite a thing, okay? And so I remember thinking at the time, even though we were Shomer Shabbos at the time, I was like, I wouldn't want to be tested like that. I don't think I would have failed the test, but I wouldn't want to have a test like that. Zoomed forward a number of years, and now I'm in New York City with the film Obsession that I mentioned a few moments ago, where they flew me out to speak about Obsession and to play the film on the network. And so I went in for the recording, and we did the recording, and as I was walking out, I hear, Mr. Kopping, and is my dad here? So I turn around, and oh, she's talking to me. I'm like, oh, hi, you mean me? She said, yes. She says, I'm so glad I caught you before you left the premises. She says, I want to invite you tonight. She mentioned the name of the highest rated talk show in America at the time. She said, I would like you to be on this talk show, on this news talk show, the highest rated talk show tonight at 6 o'clock. Now, the audience for this particular talk show was the exact audience that our film was speaking to, and would have been a massive game changer for the film, would have been a massive game changer for myself. This was like a dream come true. And I said, yes, thank you. When? She said, tonight. At what time? 6. So I just arrived in New York the day before, which was a Thursday. And now this was a Friday morning. And I said, can you just give me 1 second? And I called up a rabbi friend of mine. And I was like, hi, what time does Shabbos come in? And it was like winter time. So I said 4:35, something like that. So I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. So the lady standing there, and I go, thank you very much. And I hung up and I said to her, thank you so much. This is a dream come true, but I can't be on the show tonight. So she looked at me as if to say, so I said, well, it's the Jewish Sabbath, and, on the Sabbath, we can't talk on the phones, and we can't, be on television, those kind of things. And she looked at me, and then she thought maybe I'm, South African, so I don't know who this person is. And she says, you realize that this is, and she mentioned the name of this particular show. And I said, yes, but it's Shabbos. And I said to her, I'm going to be in town for a few days. Can I come on Monday night or Tuesday night? And she was like, no, that's it. She was actually offended in a sense. Like no one had ever, no one turned down an opportunity to be on a show like this. And I think that she felt, she was very confused about this whole situation. And I don't think she felt like we deserved it and that I deserved it. It's like, that's it. It was tonight or not at all. And she walked off. And I remember thinking to myself, it wasn't a question for me. She asked, it was going to be tonight. It was going to be Shabbos. It was going to be 6 o'clock. It was like, it's Shabbos. It wasn't even a question. And it was kind of like at that moment where it was like, I felt like I'd kind of reached a point in my Yiddishkeit where it was real, where I was worried about being tested, and the test wasn't even a test. Not that I don't want to test, like don't test me, but it wasn't even a test at that stage because things were so real. We had lived in Los Angeles. We had lived in Israel. We were back in South Africa. I think at the time we were back in South Africa, and we had seen what life was like. We had seen how people lived. We'd seen, Los Angeles was like Mitzrayim in many respects. And so we got to the point where it wasn't even a test, and it was like, Baruch Hashem, I'm not going to be on his show. And that's my story.
I think it's a fantastic story. You make it sound like it was relatively easy. I'm sure at the time it wasn't so straightforward, but those are the things that solidify what commitment is all about. Shkoyach, I want to say big shkoyach and thank you. It's really, really interesting. I have just one question before, there's some people here who come on board and get very disappointed if we don't have enough music. So I've got to balance this. But one question before you go, Wayne, if I can, what are you working on?
Okay, I'm working on a top secret project that only Robin Bayhack knows about, if Robin's on the line. It's going to be released in a few weeks. So Robin knows about it. He's been sworn to secrecy. This is actually, we just finished the edits literally just this week. So Chastei Hashem. And it's going to be something that's going to be premiering on YouTube, and we'll let you know. And it's very, very different to what we've done before, but we're showing, we're exposing what is going on in American academia that is very, very scary. And when you understand what's been going on in American academia, you can begin to understand why we're seeing the kind of craziness that we are in the streets today. So that's all I can say right now.
Okay, that sounds interesting enough. When do we start looking out for it?
Well, in the next couple of weeks, and just watch out for Rabbi Shishler's daily inspiration dose and those kind of things, and it'll be buried inside that.
Oh boy. Okay, Shkayach. Wayne, thank you very much, and a lot of atzlocha.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You know, everybody has a shlichus in life. Everybody has a particular mission, and not everybody necessarily executes their mission as professionally and successfully as you do. So, should have a lot of.
Listen, we've had great role models, Rabbi. Sorry to interrupt you. We've had great role models. We've learned so much from yourself and from your wife and your entire family, and you guys were really instrumental in really moving us in many, many ways. And I think Rabbi Glass is on the line. Him and his family have moved us. Heather Setson's on the line. When I was younger, in my formative years, she had moved me. So I really feel like I've been handled, you know, from amazing person to amazing person. And my wife and I just have so much hakaras hatov. So thank you to you and all you guys do.
And of course, all of these things are directed by Hashem. So just before I round it off, somebody did ask if your relentless obsession and others, are they, what's it, the third jihad, are they available online, or how does one get to see them?
Yeah, they are available on YouTube, but the quality isn't so great. Maybe, Rabbi, what I'll do is I'll send you like much better links, much better quality links to all the films, and then people can watch it at their leisure.
Perfect, thank you. And Shkayach should go from strength to strength, and please God,
Amen,
more
amen.
importantly than anything else, we should please God see the Geula Shleima with Mashiach, and then your next movie can be the movie of the great, instead of the third jihad, you can do the third Beis Hamikdash, and instead of American academia, you can do a video on the great wisdom of Torah.
I love that.
I can assure you now, you'll have a lot of parnasa from all of those things.
Looking forward, Rabbi. Looking forward.
Big Shkayach, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for joining, and sit back, relax. We'll have a little bit of music as it is Motzei Shabbos. It should be a good foch for everybody and a good month, and a ksiva v'chasima tova. Mashiach now.
Shkayach, Mashiach now. Shkayach, thank you.
בסוף הכל יסתדר, בסוף הכל יסתדר על הצד הטוב, הטוב ביותר כן על הכל נתגבר, כן על הכל נתגבר כבר חצי מלא ויש מי שימלא את החסר הבוקר יעלה השמש תזרח הציפורים כמו בסיפורים יזמרו שבח היופי יתגלה בין כך ובין כך ולא תהיה יותר ברירה רק נחייך ונשמח בסוף הכל ישתלם, גם הכאב ייעלם תראו איך הכל יבוא אל מקומו בשלום ובן אישה יגיע עידן חדש יופיע הבוקר יעלה השמש תזרח הציפורים כמו בסיפורים יזמרו שבח היופי יתגלה בין כך ובין כך ולא תהיה יותר ברירה רק נחייך ונשמח רק נחייך ונשמח
בין הרצון לאומנות לבין חובת ההישרדות, מחפש מקום שפיות לנוח בקלות, בין הכבוד והגאות ליופי בשפלות, מביט סביב וכבר מבין את אופי המהות, ובינתיים מנסה להבין, כי האיזון שלך מתחיל מבפנים. אבא שלי תמיד כאן איתי, מלווה בדרך, אני לא לבד, מרגיש מיוחד כמו בן של מלך. בין חיי המשפחה לחיים בלי מטרה, מגלה עולם עם אנושות ועם חמלה, בין האושר בלי ברכה לפשטות עם נשמה, מוצא שתיקה של בושה אל מול שמחה, ובינתיים מנסה להבין, כי האיזון שלך מתחיל מבפנים. אבא שלי תמיד כאן איתי, מלווה בדרך, אני לא לבד, מרגיש מיוחד כמו בן של מלך. אבא שלי תמיד כאן איתי, מלווה בדרך, אני לא לבד, מרגיש מיוחד של מלך. בן של מלך. בן של מלך. אבא שלי תמיד כאן איתי, מלווה בדרך, אני לא לבד, מרגיש מיוחד.
בדד אי שם בין הערים, עומד לבד מול אלוקים, זועק ללא מילים את כל מה שבפנים, ליבי מולך הכל גלוי.